Hello, everyone, and welcome to Buy Bags. I'll be your reviewer. I'm Lonnie from Horror Heaven77, and the movie I'm reviewing tonight is a 2014 made-for-TV movie for the Lifetime Network. Okay, hey, hang on a minute, okay? Now, before you all decide that I'm out of my mind and you're going to switch off the video, just let me explain, okay? Yes, it's a 2014 made-for-TV movie for the Lifetime Network, but the movie that I'm reviewing is Stephen King's Big Driver. Okay. This is based off of his novella of the same name from his book of book of novellas, Full Dark No Stars. And the movie stars Maria Bello as writer Tess Thorne. And we also have Olympia Dukakis as Doreen. Now, Doreen, I'll get to that in a minute. And also we have Joan Jett, yes, the Joan Jett as Betsy. Now, let me get into this. Okay, now our movie starts off. We have Tess Thorne, who's played by Maria Bello. She's a writer, of course. It's a Stephen King story, so usually the majority of his stories, the main protagonist usually always ends up being a writer, and she's a writer of murder mystery, kind of Agatha Christie type books, and the detectives in her books are for elderly ladies called the Willow Grove Knitting Society. And their leader is Doreen Marquis, played by Olympia Dukakis. Now, of course, these characters are not real, but to Tess, a writer with a very vivid imagination, in her mind, she sees them and they are real. Okay, so Tess is hired to speak at a literary engagement. And at the beginning of the movie, she's, trying to get ready. And, we learn a number of things about Tess. We learn that she's, a fun person to be around. She's got a good personality, a good sense of humor. Even though she's smart and, she, writes these best-selling books and everything else, she has her moments of forgetfulness and everything. In short, basically, she's a human being. And it makes her very relatable, as a character, which I think is good, and that's one thing. Say what you want about Stephen King books and Stephen King adaptations. One thing you can usually say about a lot of his stories is that usually one thing King does is write really good, engaging characters, and this story is no different. So Tess, she's invited to this speaking engagement. She finally gets on her way. She takes a very long drive on I-84. She finally arrives, and then she meets Ramona Norville, played by Dowd. And so they have some chit chat and everything. And Ramona's telling her what a fan she is of the books and everything else. And she asks Tess if she came in on the I-84, and Tess reveals that she did. And so Ramona says, "I'll tell you what, I know of a better way. It'll save you an hour. So when you're driving home, you won't have to drive so far to get there and everything else. You'd be home in a lot sooner time." Tess finds that very agreeable. It's like, hey, I mean, who doesn't like a shortcut, right? So she goes, she does her, speaking engagement, and everything goes well. They pay her. And so she's on her way home. And as she's driving, it becomes clear that she's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And as she's driving, her Prius, runs over some boards left in the road. These boards have nails sticking out of them, and one of them damages her right front tire. She pulls off the road and realizes, like, this is a very desolate area. It's in pretty much in the middle of nowhere. There's like an old rundown convenience store, kind of gas station place, but it's all shut down. Nobody's running it or anything like that. So Tess, pulls the other boards out of the road that have nails in them, so nobody else will run over them. And she wrenches the board that's stuck in her tire out. And so she's trying to flag somebody down to help her out. Well, this big pickup truck comes driving along, and she tries to flag him down. At first, she thinks, well, I guess I didn't get his attention, but he does stop and pull up, and then, she's, thank you so much for stopping. And, yeah, I'm having trouble. I got board stuck in my, board with nails stuck in my tire. And so the driver is telling her, like, hey, if you got a spare in the trunk, I'll fix it for you. And she's like, oh my God, thank you so much. Yeah, if it's any convenience, I'll give you some money or whatever you need. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. Gets out of the truck and it's revealed this guy is huge. He's very tall, very wide. Um, Dude looks like he could be a pro wrestler easy. And at first she's kind of like, she's joking and everything else. And he says, I'll go ahead and fix your tire. So it looks like he's starting to work on the tire, but she starts to get some bad vibes from him. And he starts to become more and more intimidating. And she happens to cast a glance in the back of his truck, and she notices in the back of his truck, there are the same, pieces of like 2x4s and stuff that have the nails sticking out of it, just like the one she ran over. And so she's putting it together in her mind that she realizes like she's in a trap. And so he starts kind of looking at her and she's all like, how's the tire coming? And how's it look and all this. And so he's like, it looks around and she's like, please don't hurt me, please. And he's all like, how about instead of fixing your tire, I screw you. And then begins a marathon of Tess being beaten and assaulted and raped. And, you know, he keeps hitting her, knocking her unconscious. And, her, the poor woman, I mean, she's enduring hell. Okay. And finally, he gets done. He's pretty much convinced that she's dead. And so he drags her body out, there's a drainage pipe going underneath the road. So he drops her, pulls her in under this drainage pipe. And then he just walks away, believing she's dead. He walks away and leaves her. Except she's not dead. She finally comes back to consciousness and she, starts to try to put together where she is and she realizes where she's at. And, she, climbs out of the drainage pipe, but she finds a number of other bodies there, decayed bodies of previous victims that this guy had. She's able to make her way. And now as she's walking alone at night, she's seeing things. Her imagination's kind of running wild. She's seeing things. She's hearing things. She's thinking out scenarios in her mind, like what she's thinking about what would happen if she calls the police. And she figures that like, if word gets out that, she had been raped, that people are going to basically, it's all going to come back on her and that she was a slut. She was asking for it. And, she bit off more than she could chew basically and everything else. Well, she makes her way to a convenience store and she's able to, take care of her, clean herself up, take care of herself. And she calls, for a limousine ride home, gets home. And then like a lot of, victims of sexual assault, she's imagining things. She thinks she's hearing things where she's like at one point she's, walking into the bathroom. She opens the medicine cabinet door and she imagines like hands reaching out and grabbing at her neck. And so, she's very traumatized. She's definitely got PTSD from what she just went through. But she takes a shower. She's, nursing her wounds and everything. And she starts, trying to talk things out, thinking out loud, basically. And she's trying to determine whether or not she should go to the police. Should she not go to the police? Should she go and try to find them herself? And on and on and on. And so she's, trying to figure out what would be the best course of action for her to take. Well, the next morning she gets a call from Betsy, who runs like a biker bar. And Betsy, played by, the great Joan Jett. So, tells her that her car is there. And so Tess, goes out to get her car and they have a little bit of a back and forth. And Betsy senses that there's something going on with Tess. And so they sit down and they talk about it. And it's revealed that both of these ladies were victims of abuse. And, they discuss it. And so, Tess gets back home and she starts, again, she's like trying to think things out and she's trying to put everything together and devise a course of action so that she can, plot her revenge. And but she does go back and forth whether or not she should call the cops. Should she not call the cops? Should she take matters into her own hands, be a vigilante, so on and so forth? And as she's thinking things out, at some points of the story, she's getting feedback from Doreen by Olympia Dukakis, who is really good in this movie. She, like a lot of roles Olympia Dukakis plays, she gets some really good zingers, some good lines, and she delivers them with that great delivery of hers. So, she's always a lot of fun to watch. And ultimately, Tess decides that she's going to, you know, take revenge. She's going to go after the people or the man who raped her. But as she goes along doing her revenge, some interesting twists and turns come up along the way. Ultimately, I really enjoy this movie. It's really, really good, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But essentially, what this is pretty much Stephen King's version of I Spit on Your Grave. That's what it is. It's a rape revenge film. Um, there are a couple of moments where, you kind of question what Tess is doing. There are some moments where you're like, I don't know if what she's doing would be the best solution, but I think that also adds to it. And one of the things that I really like about this movie is that Tess is not, like when you watch, I Spit on Your Grave, the original. Okay, you got Jennifer Hills, she's a writer and everything else, but after she's raped and she decides to take her revenge, she never speaks. We never understand what's going on with her. We don't know what her thought process is, and we just have to sit and watch it unfold. And one of the things that I think is really good about this is you have Tess, who through the character of Doreen, or she's talking to herself, or there are moments when she's driving in her Prius and she imagines the voice on her GPS named Tom, that he's talking back to her as well. So, that's one thing that I really like, is that we do get, Stephen King really tried to tap into the psyche of a woman who's gone through this sort of thing. Like, what would she be thinking? What would she be, when she's planning? Like when you see, like in I Spit on Your Grave, like when Jennifer Hills goes and starts taking her revenge, hardly says anything, is always cool, calm, collected, never lets you know, never, like everything is already like so pre-thought out, never skips a beat, never messes up or anything like that. And what I like about this is that Tess, while she's, planning it, not everything always goes according to plan. And there are moments where she messes up, she makes mistakes. She, she makes some errors and things like that. And I like that because it shows that she's human and no plan is perfect. So I like it for that reason. And, like also too. Now, I mean, obviously Stephen King being a man, you can argue whether or not what his interpretation of a woman who went through this kind of abuse, what her thought process would actually be. You could say how accurate it is or not, so you could argue about that. But I mean, at least the fact that King at least tried to delve into the psyche of a woman who's been through this sort of thing. What would they be thinking if they do plan revenge? How would they go about it? And it seems more human. It would seem more normal that she would make mistakes at times, that she would, she would skip a beat, or something like that. So I like the fact that they portrayed, Tess as a real human being. Another thing that I really do like about this now, when you watch a rape revenge movie, on the one hand, you kind of understand that, sometimes the rape scene does need to be graphic in a sense, because you need to get the audience to understand like how horrible it is, so that it makes sense in the latter part of the story when the woman does take her revenge. You see what she had gone through. You've seen how much pain and agony and horror she endured. So it would make sense to want to invest in her, to see her get her revenge. And what I like about this movie is that it just shows you enough. It doesn't get overly explicit. It's not, I think the rape scene in this movie maybe lasts like about 5 minutes at most. And, it just shows enough. It shows you enough to give you the idea of how unpleasant it is. It doesn't go on for like 25 or 30 minutes like I Spit on Your Grave did, which I think is a real plus. And then, when she go, and the fact that it doesn't get too into the rape scene. So it's like, see, because like, okay, think about this. When it comes to both the original and the remake of I Spit on Your Grave, in the original I Spit on Your Grave, I've heard a number of people talk about how in the original I Spit on Your Grave, the rape scene, because it goes on for about 25 or 30 minutes, the rape scene was so disgusting and horrible and everything else. So then when she takes her revenge later on in the film, it seems like what she's doing isn't enough. A lot of people felt like these guys ended up getting too quick of a death. You know what I mean? Whereas in the remake of I Spit on Your Grave, where the rape scene, while it is intense, yes, but the length of the scene and how, and a lot of it has been shortened to where, like in the I Spit on Your Grave remake, the one you see doing the most horror to her is Matthew. And then when it comes time for the other guys to take their turn, basically it cuts to black and she regains consciousness and the whole thing is over. And so then by later on in the movie, when she's taking the revenge, people have said to me that, in the remake of I Spit on Your Grave, that the rape scene, it seems like what she did in terms of taking revenge on them was way worse than what they did to her, and so it's, I think this movie balances it a lot better. The rape scene, while explicit and hard to watch, it shows just enough to give you the proper idea of how unsettling and disturbing and horrible it is. And then when she goes to take her revenge, it's like, okay, yeah, that seems about right. She's not doing a Sarah Butler where she's all of a sudden now she's female Jigsaw or anything like that. She's trying to plot her revenge and carry it through. So I think that's, this movie balances that out just well enough. Another thing I do appreciate is that this movie is a very faithful adaptation of the book. If I remember, the ending is slightly different. Kind of the epilogue is slightly different, but still, it does follow the book pretty close. And so I'm, happy about that. Because, you always, when you get a Stephen King adaptation, yeah, most of the time you always want a good, faithful adaptation of a King book or story. Now on to the acting. I think Maria Bello is absolutely phenomenal in this movie. She plays it so well. I remember watching on the bonus features for Secret Window, Maria Bello had come out and said that she is very much a Stephen King fan and she loves his books and stories. And she's a fan of like horror and suspense and thrillers and things like that. And it shows, you could see that, she puts passion into her performance and, she emotes very well. There are scenes you really do sympathize with her. She plays it just top-notch performance in my opinion. And I think just watching this movie for her alone is worth it. The other cast do a good job. Like I said earlier, Olympia Dukakis, she, even though she's a character who's in Tess's head, but when she's there, her lines are memorable. She's fun to watch and she still gets some of those great zinger lines that Olympia Dukakis has done in the past films and things like that. Joan Jett, even though her part was very small, she's memorable. She's great. It's sad. Honestly, I honestly feel sad that Joan Jett didn't get to act in more movies. I think she did a really good job in here, even though her part wasn't very long, but still. So yeah, if you're a fan of Stephen King and you want to know like what his take on I Spit on Your Grave would be, if you're into the rape revenge movies. Now I will say, if you are not a fan of rape revenge movies, if you get too intense watching them or you're too uncomfortable watching them, I would pretty much stay away from this because yeah, there are, when you do get to the rape scene, even though it's not very long, it still is pretty intense and it's very hard to watch. But if you are the kind of person who is not offended or put off by a rape revenge film, I definitely strongly recommend this one. My opinion, is definitely one of the better ones. Like I said, the balance between the rape scene and the revenge scenes are a lot better in this. You don't have to worry about, the revenge is too graphic, but the rape scene wasn't too graphic, or the rape scene was horribly graphic, but the revenge seems kind of quick, and the characters seem like they deserve worse. This kind of balances it all out a lot better, I feel. But I would definitely say, and like I said, don't let the fact that this is a Lifetime movie put you off. Okay, this has got some teeth to it. So, go ahead. I would say go ahead and check it out. Stephen King fan, you don't mind movies like I Spit on Your Grave, things like that. I would definitely say give Big Driver a chance. It's well worth the 88 minutes you spend watching the movie. Okay, I think I've talked more than long enough. So if anybody took the time to watch all this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave the video a like. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the Body Bags channel. Excuse me. We have a different reviewer, one for every day of the week. I'm the Friday reviewer. We got different guys. Everybody's all doing good stuff. We got some good label weeks and theme weeks and everything else coming up. So be sure to stay tuned. So everybody, take care. Have a good night, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.